If you do the exact same thing, day in, day out, there's no guarantee that it won't get boring. And who's to say this doesn't apply to video games as well? If you make almost the exact same game, year in, year out, what's to stop gamers from growing tired and getting bored?
I love spin-off games, I think they're fantastic. They're like an invitation to go mad, an almost clean canvas with which you can construct whatever kind of game you want, while still using a mascot who starred in completely different games. It allows developers to construct scenarios that would otherwise be impossible in the games they usually make, and take their series to strange new places. There's still some debate as to what really counts as a true spin-off, especially because some have been so successful that they've branched off as their own mini-series of sorts, but let's just play this by ear for now. Besides, any excuse for developers to be creative should always be met with a lot of appreciation. Unless it's Shadow the Hedgehog. For nearly 30 years now, Metal Gear has made a name for itself by being a perfect blend between subtle and unsubtle. Might seem like a weird thing to say, but you get the subtle because, hey, it's a stealth game, you're not going to get a lot done otherwise. And you get the unsubtle because Hideo Kojima is a psychopathic maniac who likes to hide a video game in a medium for plot twists, Easter eggs and lashes of Japanese-ness. But what happens when you let this series off its leash?
The way I've worded that makes it sound like Metal Gear is being held back by being a stealth game, and it really isn't, because it's got more going for it than just being a sneaky stealth game. But nowadays, games are so heavily focused on action to the point where even stealth games have massive action segments in there. But if you have the raw ingredients, you might as well find a way to use them.
In all the kerfuffle that came with Metal Gear Solid 4, the thought that didn't go through my head was, you know, I'd really like to play a super crazy badass Ninja Raiden at some point. After all, we seem to be having enough fun in the cutscenes. Maybe get some kind of playable role later in the game. But for that, Konami left it alone and waited for the right opportunity, a completely different game, to give Raiden the exposure everyone wanted. The strange thing about Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is how seamless the transition is from tactical espionage to, hey man, I'm gonna slice you up with my sword. Granted, Konami invited Platinum Games along for the ride, boasting a CV of Bayonetta and Mad World at this stage. But if you hadn't heard of or played a standard Metal Gear game before this, you wouldn't know where this series came from. And yet it never abandons its roots, still stuffed to the brim with lengthy cutscenes, still with the occasional stealth segment, the inevitable underlying moral message, little nods and references wherever you go. It might lose a bit of subtlety, but it expands on Metal Gear's madness instead to create a completely different and yet equally compelling experience. Now, about that sequel.
There's only so many different ways you can make a Pokemon game. I mean, we only recently saw what a 3D Pokemon game looked like in the spin-offs like Colosseum and Gate of Darkness, at which point it was then later adopted by the main series. And we can have puzzle games, which admittedly are just palette swaps. You can have pinball games, which are admittedly just palette swaps. So every so often, you need to freshen it up from time to time.
Pokemon Conquest is a really unusual combo. It's like one of those crossover TV shows you see occasionally, something that, on paper at least, sounds like an idea too weird to function properly, I suppose. It's a crossover between Pokemon, hey, how did that happen, and Nobunaga's Ambition, which I haven't heard of. Apparently one of the early pioneers of turn-based large-scale role-playing games. And Pokemon Conquest works like you perhaps expect it to, swapping out katanas and more conventional weapons for an array of different Pokemon, with each one having just one attack it can use, still keeping the rock-paper-scissors system from main series Pokemon games intact. What makes Pokemon Conquest really stand out as a spin-off though, is how the blend between Pokemon and Nobunaga's Ambition is split almost 50-50. It never feels too much like a Pokemon game or too much like a strategy game, instead achieving this genuinely unique gaming experience that you can't compare to too many other titles. It's a strange game to describe to someone, but one you've got to try for yourself to really appreciate it. Not quite the same as moving around disembodied Pokemon heads or being the Pokemon, but a hell of a game all the same. I was going to start this segment by telling you how many Mario games there have been in its history, but I took one look at them all, listed out like this, and gave it a giant nope. There's been hundreds of the bastards, made even more remarkable when you remember that there's only been about 18 games in the main series. But you know what most Mario games lack? Other than a first-person shooter option and an expansive overworld with dragons? Humour. Alright, I say lack, I think I mean don't use enough of. They're not cold, sterile games by any means, but seeing a game like Mario & Luigi's Bowser's Inside Story shows just how funny you can make a Mario game. It came at an opportune time in Mario's history, where Superstar Saga tested the waters for the Mario & Luigi series, where Partners in Time saw how this could be translated onto the DS, and how all the other previous Mario RPGs helped to build this gradual formula that makes this kind of spin-off so inviting. By the time you get to the third game of any series, you should have at least some idea of what you're doing, let alone that the end product is one of the best RPGs of any kind ever made, with some of the funniest characters and bits of dialogue you're ever likely to see.
Mario games get criticised quite a lot for their stories. Admittedly, most of that is from me, but it says quite a lot that the star of a game series that doesn't really care for stories or character personalities can be crafted into one of the best RPGs ever made. It's almost like Nintendo know what they're doing. Of all the games to be attributed as doing the same thing year after year, perhaps one of the most guilty would be Megaman. I mean, by the time you got to 1993 and Mega Man 6, you are starting to drift into a kind of formula with these games, and that's not always a good thing. So in more ways than one, Mega Man did need a kick up the backside.
You know that transition from 8-bit to 16-bit? From Metroid to Super Metroid? From Legend of Zelda to A Link to the Past? It's a giant leap for video game kind at that point, and Mega Man joined the party in a big way with Mega Man X. Some would argue this isn't really a spin-off game because of its success, its popularity, the fact that there's now 9 of these games, but bear in mind that the classic series kept going even when the X series was hitting new heights. They exist as separate series for a reason. The reason being that Mega Man X is fucking amazing! Where Mega Man was functional, Mega Man X is stylish. You could mention its ability to teach a new player everything about itself in a short space of time, or you could focus on how much more expansive the combat is with dashing, wall jumping, giant rideable robot mechs, or maybe the much more creative level design now smothered in vibrant 16-bit colours. Or if these huge steps forward aren't your thing, maybe all the hidden upgrades will do it for you instead. It's not often that a spin-off game can be classified as better than the original, but Mega Man X practically launched itself and Mega Man as a franchise into the next era of gaming. And it's still a damn good game all these years later. You'd be surprised what success can do to a game series. It might start off as a trial, an attempt at creating something new and quirky, something not done before. But if enough people enjoy it, who's to say that you shouldn't do it again? Which brings me nicely to the Orange Box, released by Valve compiling Half-Life 2 plus expansions, Team Fortress 2, and their brand new puzzle game taking place in the same universe as Half-Life. A funky little game called Portal.
Portal became this game that you would struggle to dislike. It had so much charm, so much deadpan humour with challenging puzzles. It became this breeding ground for quotes and memes. And the only thing wrong with it, and bear in mind this was kind of a trial game anyway, was it was a little short. So what Valve did is they took what people loved and supersized it.
It was taken back to Valve HQ, fiddled with a bit, I think God smiled at some point, and then it was unveiled that Portal was getting an even better sequel. Might sound too good to be true, you might think. Portal became and still is a giant icon of modern gaming. And yet Portal 2 continued its legacy without breaking stride. The same mind-bending puzzle with a dash of new additions. The same eccentric humour now of extra helpings of Stephen Merchant. So many new quotes and memes for the internet to sink their teeth into. It was always going to struggle to match the first game's impact, but this time it's a longer experience, it's a more poignant experience, it's potentially Valve's greatest magnum opus in a library of magnum opuses. It took this one-off original puzzle game and gave it its own separate identity, its own series. And for the love of Cave Johnson, it's even got a co-op mode.
This has been RabbidLuigi, and if and when Half-Life 3 is made, there's an awful lot of pressure on it to not just be a good game, but be one of the best games ever made. What Valve has showed us with Portal 2 is they are fully capable of making a game that lives up to its hype. All we need to do now is go get Gordon Freeman from that retirement home.
What topic do you want to see on the next top 5? Leave a suggestion in the comments below and follow me on Twitter, or I'll be taking my favourite suggestions and putting them to a vote over there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, how are we doing? The top 5s have been coming thick and fast now, and I've already drafted a rough breakdown of the next one, so I suppose I'm starting to get into a kind of groove. Always a good thing to have when you're making videos. But you shouldn't dwell too much on it, and so on with the next one. Remember to keep the suggestions coming in, and that Twitter and Facebook things, they're the cool places to be right now. Trust me, I'm a scientist.